as we're going to talk about the new hire for LSU as their new interim athletic director, getting the upgrade. But let's talk about some injuries from the homies over at CFP Nation. Kalani Sitake, the head coach for BYU, stated that running back LJ Martin is expected to play versus Texas Tech on Saturday, which is some very, very good news if you are a Provo Cougs fan. LJ Martin has been dealing with a shoulder injury that he picked up against Iowa State. It's kind of nice that they had that bye to allow him to heal up a little bit and get ready for this massive matchup there in Lubbock, Texas against Texas Tech. But so far for Martin, he has 132 carries for 789 yards and 5 touchdowns for BYU this season. Keep moving through the injury news. Another one from our homies CFB Nation. Matt Campbell, the Iowa State head coach, stated that Will McLaughlin will miss the remainder of the 2025 season with a leg injury. When it rains, it pours for Cyclones fans and their defense, as the secondary has been plagued with injuries, and now we're getting a linebacker brought up in the mix. So far, McLaughlin has 13 tackles, 8 solo, 2 tackles for loss, with 2 sacks for Iowa State this season. And we continue with some more interesting injury news. Mario Cristobal, the head coach for Miami, stated that wide receiver CJ Daniels will miss multiple weeks. The injury is an undisclosed one, which is going to be pretty interesting to see what that updates to. Daniels this season has 33 receptions for 351 yards and 6 touchdowns for Miami, as he's transferred over from LSU last year. And this is one of the biggest plays this season that he did in week 1 that helped the Hurricanes beat Notre Dame there at Hard Rock Stadium. As we keep moving, some more injury news and updates from Pete Nakos. LSU linebacker Whit Weeks is doubtful versus Alabama. Whit Weeks has been out for a number of weekends for the Bayou Bengals, and it looks like he most likely won't be playing against Alabama this season. Last year, Weeks was a first-team All-SEC linebacker and has missed the last 2 games. He hasn't also practiced this week as well. As we move away from injury news and talking about some quarterback switches and updates, Missouri head coach Eli Drinkwitz talked about Matt Zollers will be starting on Saturday against Texas A&M, as Mizzou has been dealing with a ton of injuries at the quarterback position. Beginning of the year, they lost Horn. The game against Vanderbilt, they lost Prebola. Now they're going deep into the depth chart with Zollers, who is a true freshman, was a former 4-star recruit, and one of the top 10 quarterbacks out of the 2025 class. For Zollers and his appearances, he has a 60.9 completion percentage, 138 yards with 1 touchdown in the game again last week against Vanderbilt. So we'll see how that true freshman deals with A&M. Some more quarterback switching news. Stanford interim head coach Frank Reich stated that quarterback Elijah Brown will be QB1 versus North Carolina. And this is one of the switches of like, do you guys know football over there in Palo Alto? Do you not understand that Culberson is second in the country with the most interceptions? Why did it take him this long to make this quarterback switch? I just absolutely have no idea what is going on there for Stanford. Like, get someone in there that knows football. I know Andrew Luck. Oh my God, he's GM. It doesn't seem like he's doing a very good job. It should have been telling his interim head coach to make that quarterback switch sooner But it makes a whole lot of sense because when you really think about it, that's why Bear Bachmeier transferred out of Stanford and ended up there in BYU with his brother. I guess they were going with a quote-unquote veteran quarterback with experience. But at the end of the day, what does that experience get him? Well, second in most interceptions. For Elijah Brown this season, he has a 61.3 percentage in completions, 218 yards with 1 touchdown in 3 games for Stanford. But I thought he was going to be the starter going into the season. Made a whole hell of a lot of sense. He was developing there. But it looks like that new staff just took a U-turn on that decision. Making a big decision out of Boise State. One of their running backs, Jambriz Dubar, has announced that he will be entering the transfer portal when it opens. Kind of third in the pecking order for Boise State running backs, but that's kind of because he's been dealing with injuries, not only this season, but last year as well. That's why we saw Sire Gaines become the number 2 running back behind Aston Genty in 2024. And also why we see Gaines and Dylan Riley kind of emerge as one of their go-to guys. But for Dubar this season, actually, technically he's like 4th on the depth chart when we really think about it, because Sherrod is there now, who transferred in from Fresno State. But yeah, this kind of makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. I mean, he's a former 4-star recruit coming out of, I think, Lancaster, Texas, if I'm not mistaken. And it looks like he wants to go where he's going to get some playing time, but is he going to get playing time if he's not available? So I think this is kind of a decision that the player's not really thinking of, kind of about those factors. If anything, he kind of wants to transfer to somewhere where he's going to be able to stay healthy. For Dubar, in his 3 seasons for Boise, he has 90 carries for 446 yards and 4 touchdowns for the Broncos. And some interesting news. Anthony Jones has announced his commitment to UCLA. I think this was one of the many, if I'm not mistaken, decommitments and then now recommitments that UCLA dealt with when they got rid of Deshaun Foster as their head coach. I'm only kind of bringing this up because he's out of Creans Lutheran. Creans Lutheran is emerging as one of the most competitive teams out of Orange County. It's kind of a school back in the day when I was playing, in my playing days, that was kind of not very good, and has kind of turned things around. Has really been kind of developing pretty well since. This season, they technically are playing my former high school in that league, but it's kind of an interesting league structure towards like promotion relegation, and they will be in a league with San Clemente, who produced Sam Darnold, who's with the Seattle Seahawks, Mission Viejo, Dijon Lee over at Alabama, Mark Sanchez technically, who's in a sticky situation after his trip to Indianapolis. Los Alamitos, it's a pretty well-known school there. I can't remember any alumni that is in the NFL off the top of my head recently. But yeah, pretty good pickup. Anyone kind of out of Creans Lutheran is somewhat legit, especially if they're a D1 caliber player. So it's a pretty good pickup for UCLA at the end of the day, as they should be getting guys from the Southern California area, because that's technically not too far from where Deshaun Foster went to high school, Tustin High School. That was my rival when I was playing again back in the day. And Creans Lutheran is in Irvine, which is down the freeway. But back to this post from Pete Nicaus. Verge Osbury, who was the interim athletic director, has now become full-time athletic director, which means the search for the new LSU head coach has begun. And this is kind of off of obviously the Brian Kelly removal, and I'm forgetting Woodward. who was the former athletic director, got released. We even had the governor talking about how that guy was not going to be making the decision on who was going to be the next LSU head coach. It's going to come at least through this guy and probably the rest of the administrators that make that decision. We keep moving to talking about a guy that could be at LSU next season, and that's Eric Morris, who is the head coach at North Texas. He's a former Texas Tech wide receiver back when Mike Leach was a head coach over there for the Red Raiders in Lubbock, Texas. He played for Texas Tech, I think, from 04 to 08. Played in the Canadian League. Became a wide receiver coach. I think at Washington State after his playing days under Mike Leach, then became the offensive coordinator there, and then moved over to his alumni, Texas Tech, as their offensive coordinator, and then got the head coaching job at Carnet Ward, where he developed Cam Ward, who was the number 1 draft pick this past season in the NFL. So yeah, he has a decent track record of not only developing talent, but developing programs. At Carnet Ward, pretty good under him. I think he got out of there in like 2019, if I'm not mistaken. I know it's in this article that I have here from 24/7 Sports. Where is it at? He's worked with Baker Mayfield as well. That was another player on his list. I think it's 2018 when he took the job, and then eventually he got hired over at North Texas. I think he could end up at any of the open vacancies. He's been listed for like UCLA, Stanford. I think it would be a massive pickup for Stanford, but I don't think he moves over there. Florida, Arkansas, Auburn. I think he's a better fit in the Southeastern Conference. Definitely needs to improve on playing better defense, but offensively, if you pick up this guy, you're going to be scoring a lot of points, because at the moment, North Texas, if not the highest scoring team, but top 3 easily in terms of points. So you got to love that, and you're going to be pretty successful in that department if you hire him. Some other news that came out today. It was announced, I think not too long ago, that Michigan was going to be playing Western Michigan in Germany to start out 2026. Kind of throwing a lot of games going overseas as the sport is becoming more popular there in Europe. Obviously, this last 3 or 4 seasons, there's been a game in Ireland. Next year, they're adding a game there in England. So it made a little bit of sense of why, let's do a game in Germany. And Michigan versus Western Michigan was that game, but it has been announced that it's going to come back over to Ann Arbor between the two. I thought it would have been a better game for Western Michigan, but maybe they're not going to get as much money. And maybe that's where, like, okay, we're not going to do this game. Let's do it back over in Ann Arbor. They probably make a ton of money because that stadium fills over 100,000. But it is what it is. I'm not too much of like a sad face when there's games announced overseas, because again, it grows the sport over there, and you have to really think about it. There's players coming from Europe more than I think a lot of people think. Like Alabama has an offensive lineman for them. Boise State's been getting guys from the NFL Academy over there in London. There's a decent amount of talent that is coming out of Europe and making their way to college campuses to play football, and playing more games over there makes a hell of a lot of sense, because just like how we talk about recruiting for a guy that's in Texas, but he's going to go play, let's say, like the new Pac-12 for one of those new Pac-12 teams. Let's say Boise, for example. Well, Texas State is going to be there, so he's going to be able to play in his home state for at least a couple of games throughout his time for the school he's going to play for. So it kind of makes also sense that if Germany or England, Sweden the Netherlands that have developed talent want to kind of cater to them in the future, you know, establishing more games over there in the next decade kind of makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. Continuing through some games that are being announced. Auburn versus Notre Dame. This one's coming from Pete Thamel, but I think it was on Auburn's actual account where they announced it. They will be playing the Fighting Irish in 2027 and 2028. The first game in 2027 will be in South Bend, and in the 2028 season, they will be there in Auburn, which is going to be pretty awesome, as Notre Dame not shy playing SEC opponents. I think that's a good thing. Add some quality somewhat to their schedule. I think it was kind of interesting that they played Arkansas and Texas A&M this season. I really hope that Notre Dame just gets away from that alliance that they have with the ACC and just go back to what it was before, so they can play more competitive, again, games technically. But also there's like rumors that if Ryan Day goes to the NFL after this season, for some reason, you know, that's just a bit of rumor, that Marcus Freeman would be the first guy that Ohio State would hire, because technically that's his alma mater. But pretty interesting if that actually happens. The final thing we need to talk about is what they released yesterday. What an interesting bracket this is, as it's kind of been what we've been putting out ourselves since week 7 as our Monday prelude show. After we talk about our top 25, we put a nice little bracket together, and this is almost exactly what we did on Monday. The only team that is not in this bracket that we don't have on ours, or that's not on ours that is in this one, is Notre Dame. I think we technically have Texas in there over Notre Dame. Now you can have either of those two. Oregon would technically be one of the host teams. I think we have that switched and have them hosting Memphis. Georgia would be in that number 6 spot. They would be playing technically Virginia. And then number 8 would be Ole Miss, and they would actually be playing Texas Tech. That's kind of what ours look like. The 4 bye teams are exactly the same. I'm kind of interested to see how all of the bowls get set up, because it's going to be by history. So like the Sugar Bowl probably has the most history with Alabama, so they'll get that game. Ohio State has the most history with the Rose Bowl, so they'll get that one. Texas A&M would probably have a decent amount of history in the Cotton Bowl, so that makes sense that they will get that one. And then Indiana would kind of just end up playing in the Orange Bowl, because of the other 3 schools, again, have more history with those other bowls. But we'll see how it all cracks down, as I kind of wanted to show this. Their first team out, again, was Texas. Second team out would have been Oklahoma, who I don't think is really... There's like brands that they need to put in the conversation. I think Michigan, they want to have Michigan there, so that like, oh, we got to get Michigan fans to tune in. This is kind of like a show that like ESPN kind of put together so that they can just get some decent ratings. I don't think it adds to the conversation, really, to be quite honest with you. It's just more or less like, all right, guys, we don't have much going on ESPN anyways, so let's put a show together so that we can get college football fans to tune in on a random Tuesday. And so that's been it, guys. We have gotten through the news, and we're going to show those highlights once again, because we usually do it in the beginning of the stream,